What's up guys, it's Double Zug. So I'm making this on Friday. Yesterday we had the race for MSV. It was actually kind of a cool, interesting one, not just because of the drama of Progress like going in early and getting banned, who were the, sort of like presumed winners, but also because it was very close between NUMEN and Not That Bad. You can see like their times of clearing are like seconds apart. So very tight here. Their kill times are like super close. There's just, a couple of seconds here and there on like movement and trash. Pretty cool, close race. We're going to be looking through like comps and just talking over like how they healed it. There's also some POVs here. So Malvanis, who's like a streamer, he streams on Twitch, played Resto Druid and Cataclysm. He's like a good private server player who played for NUMEN. This is a Rep Pally POV. This is DPS. There's also a healer POV though. His channel's Emil Enderberg. He only has 3 subs, so go send him a sub. I don't know if he's actually going to post more than this, but it's a cool POV video. There's also the warrior, who I think posted POVs in Cataclysm, also posted a POV here. So that's that. Before we talk over these comps and go through like the healing and some cool stuff here, I want to do a couple PSAs. So first of all, I'm probably not going to be doing like full boss guide videos for MoP the way I did for Cataclysm, where I go through like every mechanic and all that stuff. I feel like you could just like go watch a Jordy video that's going to present it in a more like polished and well edited and comprehensive way. But I will be releasing tips videos for healers where I go boss by boss and just give you like a talent build, maybe some play pattern suggestions, some ways to use your cooldowns and stuff like that. I feel like that's just like a better use of my time than just restating in a more verbose and long-winded and unedited way what Jordy has already told you in the guide video you probably already watched. So yeah, that's one PSA here. For another like in-game PSA, obviously the world bosses are up. These are really useful for gear, and you can actually kill them on characters that are lower than level 90. So if you have some alts that are lower level, you can go just like get a tag, get the kill, get a chance for some loot. Obviously the like guaranteed boots off of Shaw of Fear are really nice. A couple of other things for gearing as well. If you are leveling slowly, you are just hitting 90, or maybe you're leveling an alt and you're kind of like dreading doing dailies and doing all your chores for all your gear. What I'll say is I wouldn't worry really too much about doing dailies at this point, because Celestial Dungeons are coming. Most of that stuff was really just to min-max your like day 1 clearing, which obviously we're like psychologically twisted WoW players. We love min-maxing, but not like honestly the most important thing to do unless you're in like NUMEN or something. And that's just going to be a much more efficient and more fun way of gearing than spamming your chores to Exalted to get like neck or a ring. So that's both a suggestion and a little bit of maybe some hopium for you, that you don't have to actually do all the annoying chores that people are complaining about. And the last thing to mention here is that MSV obviously doesn't have tier gear, so all the pieces in it are off pieces, which for basically all the DPS and I think the tanks as well, although tanks maybe care about tier a little bit less. I think most of their tier sets are defensive. These off pieces are just going to be placeholders for tier pieces, whereas for us, these off pieces are actually pretty strong and have a lot more longevity, because most of the healer tier stuff is not super good. The Druid is a little bit of an exception, with the rejuvenation and Swiftbend CDs being decently powerful. I think this set is like overall maybe like a 5% increase or something. There's math on the sheets if you want to link into it, but a lot of the other tier set bonuses are just totally useless. Like the Monk one, pretty useless. The Paladin one is probably the other one that's the strongest. 10% Holy Radiance mana cost actually matters, and the CDR on Holy Shock. The Priest one's nerfed, so not super impactful. It's mostly a DPS increase just because the Penance CDR is not super important. If you're playing Holy Priest and you're playing specifically like the COH style of Holy Priest, not running Divine Insight, this 4 set's actually decent for that, because it just allows you to basically do all your healing on the move, spend all your mana on COH, which is kind of interesting, but overall not like super powerful. And the Shaman tier set is also like kind of useless and doesn't, you just want to stack haste, so you want to like run LA 2-piece or something. So yeah, overall the fact that we don't really care about our tier set bonuses too much, and we just want like good stats on our gear. So if you have a really well itemized off piece in MSV, I'm just kind of giving you some ammo to talk to your loot council with and try to convince them to give you some gear that maybe you wouldn't otherwise get with your healer loot priority. So just something to mention there. All right, so now I'm going to go through the comps here. So Not That Bad is the number 2 here. This is just stone guards, right? So I'm just going to go through here, and a couple of things to mention. First of all, like the hunter stacking that was rampant on beta, there are definitely guilds that did that going in. I assume a lot of them were like planning on doing this from beta and then they just didn't pivot. This is very strong, and you can see like the kill times for Not That Bad, which hard hunter stacked, were really good on some bosses. NUMEN ran a much heavier melee comp, and they actually did some really cool stuff here. They brought a Ret Paladin, and the Ret actually was like carrying on Will Yeah, you can see the Rep Paladin's actually gapping like all the non-tanks, doing 143k DPS. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that Mal just like definitely put on his dancing shoes for the end here. Just did the dance really well and like got all the buffs. So something to say there. Definitely big ups to Mal on the Rep Paladin here. But we also see like the Windwalker doing really good here. So just a really interesting, cool composition shakeup here where you know, people were kind of dooming on stacking hunters, and it turns out, you know, you don't have to do that. Even at the very highest levels of competition, you can bring like Windwalker, Ret Paladin, really decent spread here. The one thing I'll mention is there's no druids in these comps, and this is something that you cannot do if you're like a normal guild, honestly, because if you look at Will of the Emperor, you can see that, you know, NUMEN, not that bad, the top two, as well as all these other guilds. These guys actually brought in druids, so NUMEN brought in a balanced druid and a resto druid. So if you're in a normal guild, you can't run a comp that has no druids in it. And this is something that I definitely predicted, right? Because resto druid and the druid DPS, they're not like super powerful in themselves. You know, Feral hasn't really come online yet without the gear and the trinket. And balance is just like a little bit weak, right? It's totally serviceable for a normal raid, but for this high level competition, not super exceptional. But you can see that some of these other guilds that are still like, you know, top 3, top 4 on the kill of the first boss did bring resto druid compositions. We see 4 healing. We see these guys are 5 healing actually. But mostly there was a convergence on basically 3 healing most bosses. I expected more of a composition like this that Not That Bad took, with like a resto shaman as a core, at least 1 disc priest as a core, and then a mistweaver. Just because the damage you lose, like taking a Mistweaver, is just not that much, and the 4th healer gives you a lot of safety, but the damage in MSV just feels very low. I don't know why it feels so low compared to like other times I've cleared the instance, but it just does. And so 3 healers even on progression and like blue gear, although, you know, all the crafted gear and like the world bosses coming out early, that gives you a little bit of an eye level bump. You can see here, like, everyone in this kill was like 475, 476. But yeah, kind of cool in one way. If you do have the opportunity in your guild to go this low on healer count, it will definitely be super fun to like 2 to 3 heal some of these bosses. But a little bit of a bummer for, I think, like the average guild here, because if you're 5 healing this, or even 6 healing some of these bosses, it's going to be really boring. One other cool thing to mention here is if you look through all these like top guilds, you'll see a pretty good representation and pretty good split of tanks. You can see there's DKs, warriors, there's brewmasters. There's no like one tank that's guaranteed. A lot of them are running prot warrior just for like barriers and stuff. I mean, if you look at Will, like, you know, Blitz got 5th with a double DK. So yeah, there's a lot of variability with the tanks, which I think is really cool. You know, all the tanks are totally viable. I also think if you look at these like Will healer compositions, basically every spec is represented except like the Holy Priest. You see a lot of these resto druids. Again, the resto druids aren't really being brought for the resto druid being super strong as a class in itself. You can see even one of these resto druids is 15 eye level lower than the rest of the raid, just totally brought in for those roots. But, you know, even that, like, the fact that you do bring utility that's that useful, kind of nice in itself. I also think the fact that you don't see Holy Priest in any of these lists is just more so due to the fact of the damage profile of this instance specifically, and really has nothing to do with like the power of Holy Priest. We ran like Lightwater as Holy, and the healing, the raw healing it does is just insane. There's just, again, not that much damage in this instance, and there's a lot of instances where you do want that barrier for things like, you know, the first boss, and just a lot of these bosses are like very low rot and pretty high like burst damage, and those are really the only instances where you like can wipe. Taking the double disc definitely seemed like a shelling point for most of these really good guilds, with Not That Bad running 4 healers, with the Mistweaver, NUMEN running 3. So yeah, I think this is really cool, especially if you're one of the players that can be the 2 or 3 healers. If you're not, you know, having an off spec is going to be really nice for this raid, just because it's going to get pretty boring, I think, if you are 5 healing this, especially if you're 6 healing, right? If you're 6 healing this instance, you're going to be falling asleep. You're definitely not going to be parsing, which is obviously the most important thing, as we all know. But yeah, overall, I just think it's really cool that we see like Holy Paladin, we see Mistweaver, we see Shaman Disc, obviously, we see some Resto Druid in there. Just a very diverse healing composition in these like top 10 guilds, right? So sort of accurate to what I was predicting, although we do obviously have like this shelling point of Shaman double disc. But I do think that like the double disc Shaman core could potentially be dethroned as we start to have raids that do more and more rot damage, more raid damage. The Discipline Priest does have relatively weak overall HPS, especially on fights where you can't leverage Divine Star. So I think we might see more going towards replacing one of the discs with maybe like a Mistweaver or a Holy Paladin or something like that. Although I do think, like, you know, for MSV specifically, this is easily the best 3 heal core. So I'm gonna look through the VOD a little bit. Again, this is Emil Enderberg on YouTube's VOD of his Disc Priest POV. Kind of a base to UI here. He's got the like matte crayon coloring. This is just really good visual clarity here. Pretty good UI. He's also marked as holy on details, but he is in fact disciplined, so it's a little bit confusing there. I'm not gonna look too much at the trash here. You can see he's painting as a healer. Definitely good value to paint as a healer, especially, you know, priest, you got good movement speed with feathers. You know, druid, you have roar. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do, and it's just obviously better to have, you know, your healers do it because you lose less damage, and your damage check here actually really matters, especially in day 1 gear. You want to make the kill time before the second explosion. Although, like, you know, we actually did this with like a holy priest and very suboptimal comp, and you can live 2 explosions just, you know, with the skin of your teeth. We killed the boss with like everybody dead, so ideally you want to have all your cooldowns. But as we get a little bit more stamina, and as players, you know, stop taking dumb damage and start using their personal defensives and stuff like that, this boss is going to be very, very, very easy. So if you had trouble with this on day 1, I wouldn't worry too much about it. A little bit of eye level and a little bit of experience is going to make this boss pretty trivial, I think. And it's also going to be super fun just because the damage buff you get and all the cleave. I know I had a lot of fun playing this as Mistweaver. There's almost no like rot damage. So just a very straightforward strat there. You can see they're only doing like a combined maybe 350k HPS. This fight just does 0 damage. This is a very common pattern you'll see across all the fights. And you can see, like, I don't even think he uses his Spirit Shell throughout this whole fight, which is quite interesting. Like, yeah, you can see he just literally never uses his Spirit Shell. He spends the whole fight painting, which is going to be like the biggest raid gain. So something to keep in mind there as a healer. Painting on this fight is super, super good use of your time, especially if you're not like 2 healing it or something where, again, the raid damage is just very low. Like if you look at the EHRPS for the whole fight, you can see there's spikes here, but it's only like 400k. So that's very, very manageable. And you can see like tank is doing very significant with bloodworms. That's like, you know, basically a healer, which is kind of insane. And you can see all the shamans are also doing really good because of healing tide totem plus AG on the cleave is super effective. So this fight should be very, very, very comfortable to 4 heal for you if you're in like a normal guild. So for Feng, I believe they maintain the same healing composition. Yeah, nobody respects. It's just a double disc and the shaman. This fight, again, just very, very low damage. There's some bursts here and there, but it's super, super 100% manageable as 3. Honestly, I think you could even 2 heal this on prog. They CD everything. You can see nobody even goes below like 90% HP. This is kind of what I mean about MSV just doing 0 DPS. It also doesn't like threaten your tank enough to really make you like force you to spot heal to the point where you are threatened by the rot damage. You can see he's playing Divine Star. I think Divine Star is a really good choice for like the vast majority of these encounters because a lot of the times you're actually taking damage that matters at all. The rate is stacked. And when the rate is spread, there's just not that much significant damage going out. I believe the Shaman just played Conductivity Primal Ellie like basically the whole time. Plus Ellie Mastery, which I think is just standard, right? Not a lot of crazy stuff to write home about there. Yeah, he's also is again playing the Freedom Totem. There's some cool things you can do with it here, and the other options are just like obviously not super important. Yeah, so he played this setup for the entire instance. I think Astral Shift's really good here because of all the burstiness. You can see the tanks, they're getting their externals, but they're very unthreatened as well. Like the tanks in this raid honestly feel, if they're just like a competent tank player, they feel pretty immortal, even in the gear we're at now. So again, Feng, this is going to be a very low healer count. So prepare to be off spec for this one. Yeah, you can see this, the epicenter is pretty threatening, but with CDs, this is another reason why like barrier super nice, right? Versus the Holy Priest. Although honestly, a Holy Priest like Halo at max range into this would be like Holy Priest Divine Star is basically just revival on a 15-second CD. And this is what I mean about like Divine Star being really good. If you look at epicenter here, like when the raid is taking damage that matters, it's usually stacked in MSV, and in this environment, Divine Star is just like an incredible button, right? Just super powerful. Although if you could be at max range and halo into this, that would also be insane. But you want to be stacked here in the CDs and everything. Skip all this trash here. Gonna go to the totem voodoo doll guy. This fight is like not super exciting. We'll see who they choose to send down. Kind of a cool damage pattern with the dolls. It's a little bit like Deathwing Spine, where there's like consistent single target damage on a small number of targets. So it's kind of, it would be super fun for healing. However, the damage here is just not significant enough where you have to like really shift your play patterns too much. But it's kind of cool for like, you know, Holy Priest. You could do like single target chakra for fresh renews on all these players. Rolling your hots on them, you know, blink hit, life bloom in tree form, stuff like that is kind of cool in this fight. But if it did like more threatening damage that caused you to do, you know, spine where you have to shift your play patterns a lot, you know, beacon swapping, EF, all those kinds of play styles get a little bit stronger when there's this type of damage profile. But you can see here, like they're just kind of cranking into it. The damage is so low that, like, you know, right now their HPS total is like 100k. I just feel like MSV would be so much more fun if the bosses did like 3, 4, 5 times the damage to the raid, like as just rot, so there's something to heal. But it's obviously fun to drop healers and go super low, which I think, you know, like speed killers and stuff like that will be doing very aggressively. Priest is actually really good going down because you can take Binding Heal Glyph. Did they do it with an off healer? 4 DPS. They sent 2 shamans, so they probably just had both shamans press AG. I believe it didn't show up on their healing didn't show up on details. Let's actually look at that in the log. Yeah, so you can see here that was just AG. So they had the shamans go down and kill all the ads with the tank and 2 other DPS and just pop AG plus Healing Tide Totem, and that was enough to top them so that they could get popped out. So cool use there. If you do want to send down a healer, Mistweaver is actually really good because they can do a bunch of damage and also top the raid. You can even like save revival for it. It insta-top everyone, but usually like your smart healing is enough. So those are like probably the 2 best options, I think, just because they can contribute some damage. But if you do have your like off healing CDs locked in, you can send DPS down. We'll Spirit Binder tech there. This boss just does Z DPS, so you can see literally like they're doing 100k combined HPS, and it's enough for the raid to never die. But we're going to skip all this gauntlet stuff and just go straight to Spirit Kings. So this boss it's going to be like your Ascendant Council on Prague. It's not going to be that annoying, but this boss is one of those ones where you're just going to wipe like 10 times to really stupid stuff of like people not stopping DPS for the shield, people getting hit by the slowest moving wall of death of all time. Okay, so yeah, you can see they're having most of their, if not all of their melee, just stand behind, and they're having their ranged split the damage. This is going to increase your DPS very significantly, right? And the split is not too dangerous. This is also a really nice damage pattern for something like Divine Star, where every, you know, 10 seconds or whatever, you're getting this big cleave, and so you can Divine Star like every other big cleave, which is super effective. You can see the priests are going to jump up in HPS every time they use their Divine Star, like, significantly. Again, very 3 healable. You can see here the 3 healers combined are doing like maybe 250k HPS. So this boss does not do very much damage. The Resto Shaman on this fight is a little bit screwed out of conductivity being great, just because the raid moves so much. But even on this fight, I think that he was playing conductivity, so that's pretty much just like what I would run for basically every fight in here. The fight has to be very heavy movement for you to want to play like rushing streams over conductivity. So let's skip ahead to Elegon. Actually, let's look at the MC here. So you can see this is kind of where it gets a little bit more hectic on the healers, and the discs are still like smiting here. So you know, not super crazy. One thing you can do here is you could like charge up a halo on the MC. From far away, you can have like the travel time hit right when the MC goes off, which is kind of flashy, kind of cool. But you can also just have a D-star and get the same effect. Also, like, revival is insane here, and this is really like where like a Holy Priest him at this point would be doing like, you know, 7 million healing or whatever, just something completely disgustingly insane. But also, you know, an incredible time for barrier as well. But pretty much all the exciting damage happens like at the end here, or if you mess up a shield, which is always exciting. I was just holding my revivals for the second when somebody messed up the shield, which of course people will do as they're learning. It's inevitable. You can see some goblin glider tech here for the movement. I feel like it must be so much easier to gain like 10 seconds on movement than 10 seconds in like boss kill time. Although they do ass pull some trash here, which is unfortunate. Definitely made that margin of victory a lot closer there. Let's look at Elagon next. I was actually surprised that they 3-healed Elagon. Given that there's RP here, I would have expected them to go up to 4 just for safety. But again, like, this raid just feels so low damage. So it actually looks relatively safe. You can see here there's basically zero damage going out here. And these chunks are just, you have so much time to top players. I guess the 3 healers just helps you like kill these more consistently. The damage is nice. And you can see here like players are getting below 50%, but then you have just infinite time to top before an actual threatening damage instance comes out. So like he's still just smiting, right? Like there's no spot healing having to happen here. You can see the shaman's down at like 45k HPS, so he's probably just spamming lightning bolt. Definitely well played with the off healing here. It's something that's very important to coordinate is your off healing, especially like from your shamans. Shadow Priest, if you have Shadow Priest, most of these groups I assume don't have Shadow Priest, but if you do have a Shadow Priest, VE is also insane. Healing Tide Totem, don't sleep on it. It's not obviously AG, it costs a global, but it's still very, very worth from like Ellie's or even enhances. You can also see here they're not really using their Spirit Shell, they're kind of just smiting, which goes to show that the damage is just low enough and the damage instances are not threatening enough where they actually have to focus on HPS, even with 3 heals and prog gear. And again, the Disc Priest is still running Divine Star here. You know, this part of the fight is super spread, so you might think, oh, you know, you probably want to have Cascade so you can like bounce your Cascade around all the different players here, maybe even like Halo, something like that. But you can see the rot damage here. Like you could not get a single heal for this entire phase and you just like wouldn't die. So you don't need to press a Cascade during this phase, so it doesn't matter. Whereas the one time that the boss is actually threatening is at the end here, and at the end here you're going to be mostly stacked up, which is your best case scenario for Divine Star. Similar logic for conductivity, right? The only threatening part of the fight is the end there where people are stacked, so conductivity is going to be really good. So we're going to skip all this trash as they skip the trash with Shroud. So yeah, this boss on Heroic, it's going to do like rot, but it's definitely not 6 healer rot, you know what I mean? Like I think they 4 healed it. Yeah, they 5 healed it with like double Resto Druid. They also brought in a Guardian, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, even on this fight, he's running Divine Star, which I think is kind of interesting. If you have a decent stack in the middle here, you can easily get enough hits on Divine Star to make it worth. Another fight where you could potentially Halo, as long as you're very, very careful with your Halo and you don't like obviously cancel the CC on the mobs with your Halo, which is the worst thing you could possibly do, and it's something that you almost certainly will accidentally do if you do run Halo. So a hidden benefit to Divine Star is you can't accidentally hit the ads. So yeah, you can see here, this is like, again, the one fight where you're going to have some sort of exciting, consistent rot damage on the raid to actually heal. Insane Palm fight, insane Efflorescence fight, Healing Rain fight, Divine Star fight. Once you get here, it's a little reward for your healers where you actually have something to heal. You can see that all the healers are actually like, you know, getting to that 100k HPS, although even with this damage, like 3 healers are actually doing healing, and then there's, you know, one who's doing sort of like mostly just smiting. So yeah, we look at the healing breakdown, you know, the overhang is actually pretty low. Although I imagine these Disc Priests are prioritizing smite significantly. You can see pretty high CPM of smite, so yeah, while their overhealing is very low, it's a little bit deceptive, right? Because they're not like maximizing their HPS, so this is like probably 3 healers of maximizing HPS plus some good off healing usage and, you know, bloodworms from. So yeah, kind of a little bit disappointing from the healer POV that the most high damage rot encounter is still 4 healable very comfortably on progression day 1. But that's just the way Mogashan Vaults is. It's kind of the way MoP is in general, honestly. Healer counts are going to be low. It's just the way it is. So have an off spec, try to convince your GM to go to 4 instead of 5 or 5 instead of 6. Or, you know, 3 or 2 or whatever in farm. Because if you're trying to 5 and 6 heal these, you're going to be falling asleep. You're going to be hating your life. You're going to be quitting playing healer. You're going to be going to play an inferior role. So yeah, try to avoid that. But again, kind of cool here. You can see at the end, the Resto Shaman strength is really showing here, right? The Rain, very incredible for this type of damage. And you can see the Resto Druid's actually relatively competitive with the Shaman here. Again, a really good efflorescence fight. A good fight for like snapshotting your efflow and just kind of leaving it there for the rest of the fight, because your rejuice shouldn't be doing too much off healing. You shouldn't be losing too much, not popping your shroom, rolling cooldowns at the end here, and that's the kill. So kind of a cool one. Again, not a lot of insane like healer tech here, just because again, this instance is just very low damage, commensurately low healer count. And I know a lot of priests have been like dooming, and you know, maybe if you've played it, if you went from Kata to MoP, the play pattern's very different, which I might make a separate video about. So yeah, it just goes to show like the doomers, you know, double disc in like every top guild. A little bit of wake up call that discipline, as I said in all the videos I did about the changes, discipline is still very strong, better than viable. Shaman as well, right? So the two like most nerfed specs, still very, very, very powerful. So yeah, no more dooming, boys. Also, I think Disc is going to scale really incredibly, and in Siege, we're still going to be pretty god tier. So yeah, that's my video. Again, go sub to Malv, go sub to Emil Enderberg, go watch their POVs on YouTube. They're pretty good. I don't know if this guy streams. He has no streams linked. It's a very useful thing to do to like watch other healers' POVs. If the Shaman drops something, definitely worth watching if you're playing Shaman. I'm not sure about Not That Bad if any of these players like stream or anything. I know Kenneth posts in the class Discord a lot, who is the Mistweaver here. It would be cool if Kenneth did stream or record this POV, because as a Mistweaver, it would be interesting to watch. Yeah, that's my spiel. Hopefully you gained something from this. We're entertained briefly. Thanks for watching. Yep.
Swobu, Zug Zug.